International organizations are unions of states, non-governmental organizations, ethics communities, and private individuals from various countries. These organizations aim to achieve similar goals in a variety of areas, including politics, economics, social issues, culture, and science, and they are the most prevalent form of international collaboration. There are three functions of international organization. The first one is norms, requirement, and rule making.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell where is the war happening. From 2 to 4 March 2022, the Russian forces moved toward port city of Mariupol and to the city of the center of the city. And on 17 March, it's claiming that the city had surrounded and bombarded by Russian artillery, and the Russian encircled final pocket of Ukrainian resistance on the 15th May.
Assalamualaikum. Today I would like to talk about when was the war in Ukraine started. Ukraine and Russia share deep and long-standing cultural and historical ties. These ties, however, do not make them historical comparable. Russian power in Ukraine has increasingly resembled that of an imperial state over an unwilling colony since the beginning of the modern Ukrainian national movement in the mid to late 19th century. This is not a new phenomenon. On February 24, 2022, Russia announced a military invasion of Ukraine, escalating the Russo-Ukrainian War, which began in 2014. At the commencement of the war in 2014, Russia invaded the South-Ukrainian territory of Crimea, and Russian-backed rebels seized part of Ukraine's eastern regions, igniting a regional war. A month later, in March 2014, the Russian military took control of Ukraine's Crimea region. Russian president emphasized the necessity of safeguarding the rights of Russian citizens and Russian-speaking residents of Crimea and southeast Ukraine. Following a disputed local vote in which Crimeans chose to join the Russian Federation, Russia formally occupied the peninsula. According to the United Nations, fighting in Ukraine has killed over 30,000 civilians and displaced more than 7 million people since Russia launched a full-scale military invasion on February 24, 2022. The war has forced an additional 5 million Ukrainians to flee to neighboring countries, the vast majority of whom have gone to Poland, a NATO country where the US and other allied forces are aiding in managing the influx of refugees. Thank you.
Okay, so for the development impact of war in Ukraine, firstly is Ukraine population will be poor and economically vulnerable since most farmers and food manufacturers cannot provide agriculture inputs. And secondly is most infrastructure, physical assets and buildings such as school and hospitals are destroyed, which are estimated lost $100 billion at least. And lastly is causing more delays in global sea transportation system and to have increased oil and gas prices.
Next is UNDP background. United Nations Development Programme is based on the emergence of the United Nations Expanded Programme of Technical Assistance. It was established by the General Assembly of the United Nations. They assist countries in developing policies, leadership, skills, partnership, ability, institutional capacity, and resilience in order to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. Function of United Nations Development Programme. United Nations Development Programme offers developing countries with expert advice, training, and financial funding with a particular focus on the least developed countries.
Okay, next is where is the UNDP? Okay, so UNDP has its headquarters in New York City, and has about 170 countries and territories under it. So UNDP start its mission in Ukraine in Kyiv, since it has the most destroyed by the fighting.
Next, I will be presenting about UNDP response to Ukraine crisis, when UNDP is responding to the Ukraine crisis by assisting individuals in Ukraine, neighboring host nations, and refugees. UNDP collaborate with UN agencies, national and international non-governmental organizations, and civil society to provide a comprehensive response to Ukraine's escalating crisis. UNDP also responding to the most pressing needs of the affected population in Ukraine by providing emergency livelihood support, assistance, and restoring basic service.
Next, how UNDP helped Ukraine during the war. First, the UNDP has introduced a new program to address the war socio-economic impact on Ukraine. UNDP has launched a comprehensive program to provide support to the government of Ukraine and provide a humanitarian response led by the United Nations. Second, UNDP makes resilience building and recovery program for Ukraine. The Resilience Building and Recovery Program for Ukraine is based on the collaboration with sister United Nations, institutions, and others. UNDP is completely integrated into the humanitarian structure. Next, UNDP to scale up online support service to provide a lifeline to Ukraine families. UNDP is working with the state emergency service and local governments to analyze and rebuild key electricity, communications, and others infrastructure. Lastly, UNDP mobilized emergency medical supplies in Ukraine. UNDP has collaborated with emergency shelter partners to ensure that individuals facing the violence have access to much needed food and sanitary goods. UNDP also provide testing system and supplies for donate blood.
So as we know, UNDP has given a lot of support and helps to Ukraine after the war. But why UNDP helps them? First of all, it is because protection of civilians is a priority. The United Nations is prioritizing civilian protection and will expand its humanitarian activities in and around Ukraine. Direct assaults on civilians and civilian property are illegal under international law and may constitute war crimes, according to the UN's political imperative. So all attacks on health service in Ukraine should be stopped immediately. Other than that, the reason UNDP helps Ukraine people is to ensure women's and girls' equitable access and livelihood support. They are collaborating with institutions and civil society to preserve the social fabric, uphold human rights, and ensure that everyone is included, protected, and empowered. Everyone should be treated and protected equally, regardless of color, nationality, religion, or culture. UNDP also focus on ensuring that women and girls have equal access to basic needs and livelihood support, such as skills development, business support, and assisting in the growth of women's access to financing, networks, and markets. Our priority also is to address women's increased vulnerability to violence, especially conflict-related sexual violence.
We can see that people of a country at war will be treated with death. The war caused many civilian lives to be lost, whether adults, children, or even the elderly. Many will also suffer disabilities due to injuries during the war, and many will also die from diseases that are so easily spread during the war. Is it clear that UNDP's involvement in the war in Ukraine is indeed undeniable about their role in this situation?